This is Candid Conversations with Dr. Mayfield, a podcast that resources families and friends with tools to have important conversations about mental and emotional health. This show is sponsored by Mayfield Counseling Centers, helping you find clarity, hope, and purpose. Here's your host, Trever Shirin.
Thank you for joining us on Candid Conversations. I am Trever Shirin, and I am joined, as always, by Dr. Mark Mayfield.
What's going on? I'm trying to get the energy up.
Yeah.
We're tired.
I really think that maybe recording at a different time would work, but at the same time,
nobody has time.
The therapist part of me is like, that's only changing a behavior, not the root cause. The root cause is that we're miserably busy.
And then you and I trying to find time to actually schedule it.
Yeah.
It might be midnight.
Yeah.
But we'd be, drinking whiskey and falling asleep. So
there's really no good option. So I apologize to our listeners and viewers who just hear us complain about our tiredness every single episode.
Yeah, you probably will tell us to go listen to our episodes on self-care and boundaries.
Yeah.
And we probably should take our own advice on that one.
Well, in lieu of us being candid conversations, candidly, if you look back, you'll notice that all of the episodes that we start by talking about how tired we are the first recording we do in a day. And so that might be a small tell for you.
Yeah, we do multiple ones. Yeah, that's interesting.
Today, we are continuing our series on the core longings. I highly recommend that you go back and listen to the previous 2 episodes.
Love and safety, and then acceptance and understanding. And then today is significance and purpose.
So go back, listen to the first 2. If you don't have time or you just want to be a rebel, go ahead and continue listening if you haven't heard those. We're going to build off of some of those concepts and try not to repeat information like we mentioned in previous episodes. A lot of these tie into each other and they're correlated. I was talking to someone the other day about how our lives are so much more complicated and tied together than we think they are. And if we were able to choose, yes, this is the one moment that changed everything. And if without that moment, everything would be different. And sometimes that's kind of true, but not entirely true. And we need to be able to look at our lives in a way that is more holistic. Of my family is this way. The world that I was born into is this way. My body reacts to chemicals this way. It's all tied together. And I think that's really true with the core longings.
Well, I think it's tied together, but it's also, they're not one-offs. And I think a lot of times, at least in my summation, I look back and go, well, I found significance here and that should sustain.
Yeah.
But I forget, a week later, that provided significance, and now I'm yearning for that again. And I think we make those things situational instead of kind of foundational. And so if we can make these core longings foundational and figure out where we find our love and our safety and acceptance and understanding, and today significance and purpose, I don't think we'd be as flighty, I think, as many of us are or forgetful.
Yeah. And as I'm thinking about, as I was processing the love and acceptance sections and safety, I was thinking a little bit about my attachment style and how that plays into this whole process as well.
Are you avoidant or anxious?
I'm avoidant.
I'm anxious.
I thought I was anxious.
Yeah.
And then after taking an online quiz and doing some reflective studying on it, I think that it is avoidant. But I think recognizing those things about us in correlation to the core longings can be really important. And I think for significance and purpose, these are, if we were to make a hierarchy,
I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
I think these would be a little bit higher. Even if we were to do a really unfounded correlation or relationship to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the pyramid, I'd say these are more near the top. And I say that because I think that this is the concept that most of humanity grapples with and tries to figure out. Because we hear midlife crises and just our experience of like, what is the meaning of man or humanity? What is the purpose of existence?
Well, I think it's interesting because you're saying hierarchy. I was looking at these going, I wonder if we could do a Venn diagram where each of these represent a circle and each of them overlap at certain levels. And I think, I'm just thinking out
all
loud.
I can think is Captain Earth.
Nice. Well, I'm just thinking all I can think about is I think we want to be in the center of where all these overlap. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, I think figuring out how we are in all 6 of these, and some of them might be skewed.
Yeah.
Right. So we do a hierarchy, but I also think too, going, okay, how do I find kind of the synergy between love, safety, acceptance, understanding, significance, and purpose, and how do I maintain that? I don't know. I mean,
well, because ultimately we want to have all of them.
We do, right? And in a healthy way.
And it's kind of like a wheel. We're mixing all sorts of metaphors here.
Sorry, guys.
It's kind of like a wheel where if one part of the axle or axis, or one part of the wheel is not intact or missing or lower than the rest of it, the entire wheel is thrown off.
It's like my flat tire last week. Yeah.
Totally.
Right.
And so I think if we picture it from that way of it, they're all very important. Some may need more focus at a certain time in our life than others, but we can't go through life without feeling like we have purpose.
Well, we could try. But then we're looking in different places. I think if we go through life without having purpose, or at least figuring out what purpose is, our love and acceptance, I think, would be out of whack.
Yeah.
Right. So we're looking for, we talked about last week? Yeah, we talked about a little bit with the acceptance piece. I'm going to go get wasted because my friends are getting wasted, even though I don't like to drink. I'm just doing it to get accepted. Right.
Yeah.
And so some of the things that we choose to do in desiring acceptance can create, I think, a skewed view of things. So I do think in some ways, going back to your hierarchy piece, that makes sense, because if we don't have purpose or even significance, how are those pieces of acceptance, safety, and love going to be?
And I like your reframe that we can go through life without one of these, but that it changes the rest of everything.
Oh, right. It totally messes up everything else. Right. Absolutely. Well, like for significance and purpose, like I've been thinking about this for the last probably a week or so, just kind of thinking about how do I view those. And I've had a hard time in some ways differentiating the two in my own life. Like finding significance is purpose. I don't know. I mean, that's not I know that's not a healthy way of looking at it, but that's, for my life going, okay, if I have significance, if somebody sees me for me, then I have purpose. And I'm like, that's probably not the best way to look at it. I don't know what you think about that. But
I mean, the way I would conceptualize that is that you do have a purpose that you're pursuing, but it's a purpose that is dependent on others rather than, because I think I see purpose as I was placed on this earth, or I was designed, however you want to conceptualize that. I was designed for this world for this purpose.
Yes. And if you derive all your significance from that, I think then you're going to be disappointed. Yeah. Here's my example. So, I mean, I still grapple with this on a weekly or monthly basis. But when we started Mayfield Counseling Centers 4 years ago, that was my significance.
Yeah.
My purpose was, right, to do counseling and to try to impact our community. But I found my significance in that. And so when things weren't going well, right, now my significance and purpose, I wasn't feeling significant. I was feeling less than. I was feeling all these things. Yeah. Because I tied those two together, and I think they have to be differentiated.
Totally.
Right. And it's interesting that when we look at the list of these, love and safety are first, and then acceptance and understanding. So, but I wonder if you could, if we talked about significance and love and purpose and safety, but for some reason they're at the end, and it's interesting how I tie those together. I don't know if anybody else can relate to that, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, and it's interesting looking at these two and seeing them from, I don't know, an independent lens. I think that it's really important that with significance and purpose, and as we parse them out, that we find ways and definitions to fulfill those core longings that are based on self and our spirituality. Because I think a big part of faith and spirituality is aligning our tiny little lives to something bigger and beyond ourselves.
Right.
And one of the ways that we can get caught up in feeling like we don't have significance or purpose is by trying to find those in other people. And if we're able to have a healthy balance of, I know that I have significance because I'm finding it within myself,
or within a higher power,
and within that spirituality that I have. I think that in my mind right now, as a 26-year-old young man, that makes the most sense and seems to be the healthiest way to find fulfillment in those two core longings. Even though, I mean, I don't know if I have a really strong definition of.
Right. I think, and maybe if I can help our listeners a little bit, maybe help me as I verbally process this, is I think significance is now, purpose is a journey. No? I don't know. So I feel like
Significance is now, purpose is a journey.
So basically significance is this idea of like, okay, how do I see myself in the now?
Yeah.
And purpose is kind of where am I going?
Yeah.
And I think they do. I think you're right. They do intertwine. But I don't think, this is where, like I talked about earlier, where I get stuck sometimes is I place my significance in my purpose. Whereas I think a healthy way of looking at it is going, like you just said, do I find my significance in who I am, and the fact that I'm kind and, intelligent and fun, or whatever, whatever those characteristics are. And I think that purpose piece is am I allowing my significance to align with my purpose as I move forward in life, and how am I engaging the world around me with, I don't know. I mean, just again, processing out loud.
Yeah.
Here, but
and I think that's
why we love the candid conversations piece, because a lot of us, we're figuring this out ourselves.
One of the things I'm thinking about is, and what I'm going to say is very production oriented, which I'm struggling with in my personal life as well. But it seems as if it would be really easy to get caught up in the purpose is the goal, and the significance is how well I'm doing towards that goal. And I say that because I think it's important for us to realize how many different ways we can interact with these core longings, and that many of those sound really good,
right,
but are devastating. To use that example with you and Mayfield Counseling Centers, you 3 years ago, working towards building a practice so that you can do counseling, so that you can serve the Colorado Springs community. So that's the purpose.
Right.
The significance was, today I got up, I did the budget, I was able to connect with the board members and blah, blah, like do these things towards that goal. Then the next day, if the company fails, now you don't have any significance or purpose because, one, they were tied together.
Right.
And two, I think that the purpose was a little narrow.
Sure, I agree.
There's a really good book of Find Your Why.
Start with why.
Is it Start With Why?
Start with why.
Start with why. Basically what it's talking about, we've heard the old adage, like, find one thing you can do well and do it really well, but forget everything else. Like, don't do 100 things mediocrely, do one thing well.
Right.
And this book is saying that that's a false premise. You should find out what your purpose is, and anything that aligns with that purpose, do that really well.
Right, which is why I think, as we talk through this, thinking about my purpose, let's say, I think my purpose is to really break down the stigma of mental health and really fight against suicides, right?
Which is much bigger than Colorado Springs.
And much bigger than just counseling.
Yeah.
And so that's why you look at what we're doing with the podcasting, and, a plug for your Monday Minute and your shows that we're doing on our YouTube channel, and why we're doing the conference, and why we do parent talks, and why we do, mental health trainings and all that kind of stuff, it's because it's much bigger, and those things could continue to happen whether or not we had a physical building called Mayfield Counseling Center.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's, if you want to take purpose and I know there's a lot of different viewpoints on this and very strong opinions, but what if you called purpose kind of your calling? Mm-hmm. Right. And I know there's a lot of people that don't like that word, but I think for the purpose of this conversation going, okay, it's a bigger, all encompassing drive towards the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And doing some meaning making.
Right. Cause I could go be a counselor and see 20 clients a week and be satisfied. Mm-hmm. But would that satisfy my purpose? Well, no. I feel like my purpose is much bigger than just face-to-face counseling sessions. And it's part of the reason we are doing what we're doing, right? Not standard in the process of just, check off 20 clients and go home.
Yeah. And I think it's the difference between an occupation and a vocation.
Yeah, that's very true.
Where the vocation is how you are operating within your right? Within your am I got that backwards? Totally screwing this up. Essentially, not all
conversations.
Not all not all crows are ravens, but all ravens are crows. So basically what I'm trying to get at is that we have our jobs, and a lot of the times we find our purpose in our job, and we find significance on how well we're doing financially or occupationally in that job. Mm-hmm. But ultimately I think it's occupation and then vocation. So your occupation is your job.
Right.
But your vocation is really the bigger picture of, yes, I am currently flipping burgers at McDonald's and going through school and paying for my wife's school or whatever the process may look like. And that doesn't take away from the importance and the validity of that current occupation.
But the desire is to be a restaurant owner someday, or
like even if it's one day I'm going to own this McDonald's, or one day I'm going to take the hard work ethic that I've built here and I'm going to apply it to building houses in Africa, or teaching people how to cook in a different country, or whatever it ends up being. I think if we can look at our lives from that way, and it's a long process to figure out what that vocation is, and an even longer process to recognize that it can change from season to season.
Well, and I think that's I think in some ways, I'm just thinking about this out loud too, again, is maybe significance is where I find my value, and purpose is how I live it out.
I like that. See, we finally come to it.
Took some coffee a while.
Thanks for joining us 20 minutes into the episode. Yeah. We've finally come up with the.
But I think if we look at it that way, then we can parse it out from a maladaptive standpoint. So if I find my value in people and things and money and the significant others and that kind of stuff, then how I'm going to live that out is going to be maladaptive. But if I find my significance in my character traits and my talents and my gifts and then how I live that out is going to be different.
Totally.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that too.
Okay. Let's write that down someplace or come back and listen to that.
Well, thank you for joining us on this conversation as we give you the thesis at the very end. We really do appreciate all of our listeners and viewers who join us every week, especially when it's a rambling type episode like today felt.
But I've been told that sometimes people appreciate that.
Well,
so.
Hope that's you. Yeah. And if it's not,
sorry,
you can send me some hate mail at candid@mayfieldcounseling.com if you have encouragements or things that you would really like for us to talk about, anything that has come up for you in the process of listening to these episodes that you want to hear some more dialogue about, or something that we missed from a previous episode that you think deserves more attention, feel free to reach out to us. And as always, if you are in a place where you are struggling to find significance and purpose, and you just need some added help, a paid friend, as Yalom would say, we highly encourage you to seek out counseling at Mayfield Counseling and to give it a shot. Call Adam at 719-452-4803. He will sit with you on the phone and discuss some of your situation and how we may be able to meet a need in your life at this moment.
Sounds good. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for joining Candid Conversations. If you would like more information, you can email candid@mayfieldcounseling.com or call 719-452-4803.